a poll from the group More in Common says that 45% of people think Labour should keep the Rwanda plan. But Keir Starmer has said today that he will not be doing so. In fact, he's saying no flight will take off under a Labour government. We've taken such a long time to actually get here. The government now saying that by the 24th of June, so just over a month, those flights could actually take off. Let's talk to Henry Smith. He's a Conservative MP. Henry, thank you for joining me this afternoon. What is your reaction to Labour's plan, what Keir Starmer has been talking about today in Dover, which until just over 48 hours ago was represented by Conservative MP Natalie Elphicke, of course, switching to Labour?
Well, what we heard today is nothing new. In fact, everything that Keir Starmer was talking about in terms of apparently getting tough on immigration is already happening. There is already coordination between the border force and the police and the security services and agreements with the French and so forth. So just sort of rehashing what is already going on and frankly what isn't working in terms of stopping illegal migration just won't cut it. What we need to do is leave the ECHR so that once people get to these shores, they can't make spurious claims which see them never removed from this country, despite, in many cases, even after committing appalling crimes. And it's worse than that, because I fear what Labour will do if they get into government is they will do some backroom deal with the European Union. They were already last year, Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper were over in Brussels talking to the EU, where they will agree to take a significant number of illegal migrants directly from the continent. So in a way that will stop the boats, because people won't need to get into boats to get to this country, because we will be facilitating a route. It's worse than that as well. They are now also talking about people being able to make asylum claims to come to the UK remotely in other countries, anywhere around the world. So my fear is that they will make the illegal crossings less visible, because simply they will facilitate entry through quote-unquote legal means, but it will still mean migration at a significant level, and that is unsustainable for our country.
Well, let's see what Keir Starmer had to say a bit earlier today, and then I'll ask you for your reaction to what he said. This is Keir Starmer's message to people smugglers.
We use the term small boats, but the boats are not, for the most part, that small. The gangs now use dinghies that are on a scale way beyond anything you would see for legitimate recreational activity. And we should be working with our European partners to seize those boats, seize material here in the UK to collect further evidence, turn over every stone, use every reasonable power. And that is my message to the smugglers. These shores will become hostile territory for you. We will find you, we will stop you, we will protect your victims. With the Border Security Command, we will secure Britain's borders.
He's certainly talking tough there anyway, Keir Starmer. He says his four-point plan, a new border security command funded by scrapping the Rwanda scheme, with hundreds of specialist investigators from the National Crime Agency, Border Force, Crown Prosecution Service, MI5 and Immigration Enforcement, new partnership with Europol and new intelligence sharing networks, a new counter-terrorism powers to allow officers to conduct stops and searches at the border, closing bank accounts, tracing movements, shutting off internet access of people smugglers, and a rules-based asylum system with fast-track reforms, an enforcement unit and a returns agreement with the EU. I mean, that is new policy. Those are new things, Henry.
No, those things are already happening at the moment.
There isn't a returns agreement with the EU.
Well, and that's what we should be, that is the only thing that doesn't exist at the moment. All those other things about data sharing, working with the French, working with international intelligence agencies, the ability to shut down bank accounts of criminal gangs, all of those things exist right now. The governments are doing those right now. It's not working. People are still coming over in huge numbers. The bit I'm very concerned about, and I think people should be very wary about, is this idea of sharing, coming to an agreement with the Europeans. What that will mean is we will agree under a Labour government to take 100,000, possibly more people a year.
How do you know that, Henry? There's no evidence to back that up.
Well, the evidence is that Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper were over in Brussels last year negotiating what a future Labour government would do. What we need to do is we need deterrence like the Rwanda flights. That isn't the only solution, though. I would argue we need to leave the ECHR that is a system that was set up after the Second World War to deal with refugees fleeing persecution after the Second World War, and make sure that we have a robust.
So don't you think there are refugees? Sorry to interrupt you, Henry, but do you think there are refugees that are fleeing persecution now? We've taken in a lot of people from Ukraine, for example. I mean, that is still the case. We are still a compassionate country in some ways, and surely we should accept asylum seekers to some degree because of that compassion that we've always shown in this country.
We're an extremely compassionate country, and it's not just refugees from Ukraine that we've accepted. 25,000 thereabouts people from Afghanistan as well, and many other parts of the world. We have provided up to 3 million British national overseas, what called BNO Hong Kong passport holders to potentially settle in this country as well because of the oppression that they're suffering under the Chinese government. This country has a long record of being very welcoming, but what we can't have is illegal migration. And the thing that people seem to constantly forget, that if you are in France or you're in Belgium or you're in any other European country, those are safe countries. You are not fleeing persecution to get to the UK. People come to the UK because of the English language, because of the benefit system, because you're much more likely to get a job in this country, because employment levels are higher. And that is the draw factors. Now, that shouldn't mean that people just have a right to be here. Labour also talk about, in the same breath, a housing crisis. Why do they think there's a housing crisis in this country?
But legal migration is a big part of that as well, and those numbers have to come down too, don't they?
Exactly so. Exactly so. This is a small island. England is the most densely populated country in Europe, I think, outside of the Netherlands. And therefore, we cannot just simply take large numbers of people, or whenever there's a crisis around the world, and people now talking about, well, we should be taking Palestinian refugees. We can't just house the world and take the world in whenever there's a problem or a crisis. We need managed migration. And the only way we're going to do that is by leaving these supranational bodies where foreign judges are getting out of bed late at night to stop a flight.
But your leader, just finally, Henry, I know you've got to go, but your leader, Rishi Sunak, says that the new policy that has been implemented, the migration bill, actually will mean that there aren't these challenges, that he will be able to get people off to Rwanda, and the ECHR won't be a major factor in any of this.
Well, and I voted for all of that legislation, just like I voted in favour of the Rwanda flights in the House of Commons, and I think they will help. But until people know that once they get to this country, the chance of them ever being deported is minuscule, quite frankly, in terms of the history of those who are successfully deported. Until people know that, then I think the people smugglers this evening listening to Keir Starmer will be laughing, and then they'll be sleeping very soundly in their beds because they know their business model will be able to continue, and it's Britain and the British people who will suffer. And just finally, Peter, I would say I agree with you on Eurovision. Never been the same since Terry.
No, it certainly hasn't. Thank you very much indeed, Henry Smith, Conservative MP.